She was only 24 when the weight of the world seemed to press down on her shoulders. A young mother, with a toddler who clung to her for warmth and comfort, she found herself navigating life alone after a painful separation. Bills piled on the kitchen counter like unspoken reminders of her struggle, and the silence of her small apartment often felt heavier than the noise of the city outside. Nights stretched into long hours of worry, and mornings demanded strength she wasn't sure she still had. Yet somewhere inside, a fragile dream refused to die, the dream of becoming a lawyer. It wasn't a dream born of luxury or ambition. It was born from necessity. She wanted to build a better life for her child, one that didn't revolve around late rent notices and borrowed money. But every time she pictured herself in a courtroom, wearing the sharp confidence of a lawyer, her reflection in the mirror whispered doubt. How could a single mother, juggling 2 part-time jobs, ever manage years of law school? The thought alone seemed almost cruel. Still, she applied. The day the acceptance letter arrived, she stared at it for hours, her heart both racing and sinking. Her son tugged at her sleeve, asking for dinner, and she realized then that this wasn't just about her, it was about him too. If she was going to walk into this new life, she would walk carrying his future in her hands. The first months were relentless. Her classmates seemed so different, carefree, well-rested, with parents paying their tuition and supporting their every step. She felt like an outsider, a shadow at the edge of their conversations. But beneath the doubt, a quiet fire began to grow. She was not doing this for comfort or prestige. She was doing this for survival, for dignity, and for the little boy who trusted her completely. And though the path ahead looked impossibly long, she whispered to herself late at night, almost like a prayer, that one day the struggle would be worth it. Her turning point came in the form of a professor whose sharp eyes seemed to notice everything. He had watched her quietly in class, the way she sat near the back, exhausted but determined, always prepared, despite the weight she carried. One afternoon, after returning a graded essay, he asked her to stay behind. She braced herself for criticism, but instead, he spoke with a gentleness that disarmed her. He told her he saw something rare in her work: clarity, persistence, and a voice that could move people if she learned to trust it. That moment became an anchor. It was the first time in years someone had looked at her not with pity, but with belief. She carried those words like a small flame in her pocket, something to warm her on nights when her doubts grew too loud. The professor didn't make her journey easier, he couldn't pay her bills or quiet her child's cries at night, but he became a steady presence, reminding her that her dream was not impossible. Still, the road tested her endlessly. There were days when she sat in class, fighting sleep after working a double shift at the diner. Days when the daycare called because her son was sick, and she had to choose between missing a lecture or leaving him in someone else's care. Days when she thought of walking away entirely, convinced she was selfish for chasing a dream, while her child deserved more of her time. But slowly, she began to change. She stopped hiding in the back row and started raising her hand. She asked questions, challenged ideas, and pushed herself into spaces she once thought weren't meant for her. Her classmates began to notice her not as an outsider, but as someone with a voice worth hearing. Each small victory, a strong paper, a good grade, a compliment from a parent, did a brick to the foundation of her confidence. Her son, too, became part of the journey. At night, he would sit beside her at the table with his crayons, drawing as she studied. Sometimes he would tell her, in his small voice, that he wanted to be like her when he grew up. Those words carried more weight than any degree ever could. They reminded her that even on the hardest days, she was teaching him something no classroom ever could, the lesson of resilience. She was still far from her goal, but step by step, guided by faith in herself and the quiet encouragement of a mentor, she was no longer just surviving. She was beginning to believe. Years passed in a blur of books, exams, work shifts, and bedtime stories. Each semester felt like a mountain, yet somehow she always found the strength to climb. The nights of exhaustion never truly left, but they became part of her rhythm. Like waves she learned to ride instead of fear. She carried scars from the journey: missed birthdays, moments of guilt, times when loneliness wrapped around her like a cold blanket. But with every sacrifice, her determination grew sharper. When graduation day arrived, she stood in her cap and gown with her son by her side, now old enough to understand what his mother had achieved. He clapped proudly, his small hands echoing louder than the entire auditorium in her heart. She had made it this far, But one final trial remained: the bar exam. The preparation was grueling, more demanding than anything she had endured before. Weeks of isolation, endless practice tests, and the constant fear that one failure could undo everything she had fought for. There were moments when she broke down, her face buried in her hands as doubt crept back like an old shadow. But she remembered the professor's words, the long nights her son had sat beside her, the sacrifices she had made. She had not come this far just to give up. The day of the results was a storm inside her chest. She refreshed the page on her computer again and again until, finally, the words appeared she had passed. She stared at the screen, tears falling freely, unable to hold back the tide of emotion. Her son hugged her tightly, his voice small but steady as he whispered that he always knew she could do it. Becoming a lawyer was more than a title, more than a job. It was proof that even the most fragile of dreams can survive if we refuse to let go. She had walked through loneliness, exhaustion, and endless doubt, and emerged not just with a career, but with a new self. Stronger, wiser, unshakable. Her story wasn't just about law school or a courtroom. It was about the power of perseverance, the quiet strength of a mother's love, and the truth that even against all odds, we can build the life we dream of. Life rarely gives us the perfect conditions to chase our dreams. More often, it tests us with obstacles that seem designed to break us. Yet, within that struggle lies the possibility of transformation. The single mom who became a lawyer reminds us that strength is not the absence of fear, but the courage to keep moving forward despite it. May her story encourage us to face our own trials with the same resilience, to trust that love and perseverance can carry us through the darkest nights. If this story touched you, consider liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing for more.